This is the Oil Revolution Objective 1 about how the oil industry contributed to the post-Civil War industrial revolution in America. And when you take a look at the beginnings of the oil industry and the way it got started, you have to remember how significant oil actually is to us as a society today. We still drill for it in the ground. When we find a lot of it, we pipe it through long pipelines from place to place. And we're even out in the oceans looking for it now. But there was a time prior to the Civil War when oil really wasn't all that important to American citizens, businesses, whatever the case may be. There was a stretch where the oil industry was just mostly about ointments and medicines. People would find oil slicks in rivers and bottle it up and really not do anything to refine it. They would just try to use it for, the medicine type of things, or maybe it would cure your ills, that type of thing. The other thing that it was most commonly used for was petroleum jelly. Vaseline, as you'd know it nowadays, was actually a somewhat common commodity by the late 1800s. But prior to the Civil War, this is really all it was used for. In 1859, in eastern Pennsylvania, north of Pittsburgh, the first oil well was drilled in America. It was known as Drake's Folly, and it was in Titusville, actually, Pennsylvania. And because of the first oil well being drilled, once it was discovered, an oil industry boom started basically overnight. People started to set up wells just outside of towns. Out in major fields, you can see a couple of derricks going up in the background here. Okay. As the trend started to spread, until it eventually got to a point where it was just dominating fields across the landscape. People were constantly searching for the black gold, even going out into the water in the early stages of the 1900s and the late 1800s to try to find it there. The main reason is that as the industrial age was expanding, oil could be used as lubricant in the machines. But there were other reasons for searching for the black gold as well. The thing is that outside of lubrication for machines, other products came from refining oil also. The first major product of the oil industry was kerosene. And when oil is heated to a certain point, kerosene is the byproduct. Kerosene is what steams up to the test tube, and when you cool that, that steam that is left from the heating of oil, what you're left with once it cools is kerosene. Now, the kerosene revolution that took place in this country in the late 1800s had to do with everybody's need for light. Prior to lamps or candles or anything like that, when the day ended, it just ended. Darkness ruled everything, especially in the wintertime, and people basically stayed in and went to sleep. Well, basically, candles kind of light the way, so to speak, in the early days. But prior to electric light, glass chimney lamps also became fairly popular as a way to have light. Now, the lamps were more popular than the candles themselves, just because they would last a little bit longer, and typically they would burn whale oil. You'd go out and harvest whales from the ocean, and the whale oil became a big part of the whaling business, as people would use it to light these kerosene lamps, or light these chimney lamps, I should say, with whale oil on a cotton wick. Well, kerosene creates a brighter flame than whale oil does, and because of that, and it lasts a little bit longer, so because of that, whale oil soon became obsolete. Kerosene sales started to boom, just going through the roof, and kerosene was America's fourth largest export by 1870, just 5 years after the Civil War ended. The problem, though, for the kerosene and oil industry was the impact of the light bulb. By 1885, light bulbs were starting to make kerosene completely obsolete. Now, initially, light bulbs were only available to the rich. The poor were still using kerosene lamps, and many cities were still using gas lights on the streets. If you go up to Petoskey, and you'll see the gas lights where they have them inside the glass canisters on top of a pole. That's the old gas light district of Petoskey. Those gas lights were very popular on most streets as you'd turn the gas on and somebody on stilts would go by and light each one of those lamps every single night. But by 1900, by the time you get to the turn of the century, 15 million light bulbs would be in operation. And kerosene, as a result, was starting to dwindle as a usable product. The oil industry, which had boomed with the kerosene production, had to find some kind of other option. Well, eventually they found one that kind of surprised them. See, the thing is that when you create kerosene in oil refineries, once again, the oil is heated. The steam, once cooled, is kerosene, and the rest was used for lubricating machines, like we said before. But the process also, and this is the biggest key, the process also produced what chemists back at that time referred to as a volatile, wasteful byproduct that nobody knew what to do with. So every time they would refine oil, they'd keep the kerosene, they'd keep some of the good crude, but they'd get rid of the volatile, wasteful byproduct because they had no idea what to do with it. They were afraid it was going to blow up in the lab. Well, that volatile, wasteful byproduct is something that we now call gasoline. They had no idea at that time that gasoline would be so profitable for them later on. In the beginning, gasoline was just something that you got rid of because it was too flammable. It was too dangerous to deal with. Once it was realized that the quote-unquote volatile, wasteful byproduct could actually be used in a new invention called the automobile, as you can imagine, the rest is history at that point. As automobile sales start to skyrocket, the demand for gasoline goes way up. So essentially, the popularity of the automobile by 1900 essentially saved the oil industry. Oil refineries decided to continue keeping crude oil for lubrication of machines or whatever the case may be. They decided to keep the kerosene because people still wanted kerosene to some degree, although it was getting greatly outpaced by the light bulb at this point. But the new major leader in the oil industry now became gasoline production, something that used to be an absolute afterthought when they were refining oil into kerosene, something that they used to just throw away because it was absolutely no good, now became the thing that saved the oil industry as a whole, their version of gold. Okay, that's it. Thanks for listening.